to another edition of Thunderdome, Mask Edition. Okay? Don't forget to subscribe and like that bell and ring it and stuff. Okay. Chapter 5, learning. I know you think you know what learning is, right? So learning is, I come to school, I study, I get this knowledge, I regurgitate it on the test, I learned. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're talking about how you acquire new behaviors and how you keep those behaviors present in your life or get rid of them. That is what learning is for AP Psych. So let's look at that. So what is learning? In the everyday sense, learning often refers to formal methods of acquiring new knowledge or skills, such as learning in the classroom or learning to play the flute, but that's not what we're talking about. That's too broad. So learning occurs in every setting, not just in the classroom, as learning takes place at every age. Further, the psychological study of learning is not limited to humans. We'll see that with Pavlov's dogs. We've already talked about that. So, for our purposes, learning is this definition: a process that produces a relatively enduring change in behavior or knowledge as a result of past experience. Conditioning is a huge part of this. There's two types of conditioning that we're going to go over. Classical conditioning is Pavlov's dogs, so you've actually had experience with that before. And then there's operant conditioning, which is punishment and reward. This probably happens to us a lot. Okay, so we'll be able to pick out real life examples of this as we move through this. It says there's three types of conditioning. There's actually one more type of learning that we will cover, and it's observational learning, which is pretty simple to understand. You watch somebody do something, and you get to learn from their actions and their behaviors, not just your own. It's a pretty safe way to learn, actually. Classical conditioning. So one of the major contributors to the study of learning was not a psychologist. He was actually a physiologist. He was Russian. It was Ivan Pavlov. He won the Nobel Prize in 1904. That means nothing to anybody necessarily, but that'd be a little trivia tidbit for you. But the first person to describe basic learning processes of associating stimuli that is now called classical conditioning. Watch that video if you can. It's the office scene with Jim and Dwight. And he pairs the sound of a computer turning on with the need for a mint, if you remember that. But watch it if you'd like to. It's a good example of classical conditioning. So classical conditioning, what is our definition of it? It's the basic learning process that involves repeatedly pairing a neutral stimulus with a response-producing stimulus until the neutral stimulus elicits the same response. This is going to take some effort from you. You will have to understand these terms a little bit, or just enough to understand what they are in Pavlov's experiment. And once you understand that, you'll be able to apply it to real-world situations as well. So the neutral stimulus is anything that elicits attention. It's me banging on this. It's me clapping, okay? Anything that's going to say, hey, what's that? That is a neutral stimulus. In Pavlov's experiment, it was the bell. So neutral stimulus initially produces no specific response other than focusing attention. Then we have the unconditioned stimulus, the UCS. And the reason this is all confusing is because they all sound the same. Okay, so the unconditioned stimulus. The natural stimulus that reflexively elicits a response without the need for prior learning. When food is presented to the dog does what? Drools. Reflexively. It didn't have to learn that. Same thing happens to you. You walk by I Love New York Pizza downtown, and you smell the pizza, and guess what you do? You drool. You're just really good at holding it in your mouth. Okay? So, that is the unconditioned stimulus, the UCS. Then we have the unconditioned response, the UCR, which is actually the drool, right? Salivation. So the unlearned reflexive response that is elicited by the unconditioned stimulus. This is unlearned. It is the reflexive response. You know, another example of this would be if I blew air into your eye, what would the reflexive response be? You would blink. You wouldn't be able to stop it. Okay, so UCR. The conditioned stimulus, the CS, is paired with the unconditioned stimulus. So a formally neutral stimulus that acquires the capacity to elicit a reflexive response. In this case, it's the bell. Okay? So the conditioned stimulus, formally neutral stimulus, let's use the same example that I just did. Let's say that I have a little tone that I play every time I blow air into your eye. So I play the tone, and I blow air into your eye, and you blink, and then I do that so much, and then I take me blowing air into your eye, which would 100% be really weird in these days. And then all of a sudden I just play the tone. Guess what you end up doing? Blinking. And if you think you're above that, you're not. Okay, so you can be trained like a dog. You have been trained like a dog. And you will continue to be trained like a dog. It's weird to realize that. You think you might be above it, but you're not. So conditioned response, the learned reflexive response to a conditioned stimulus. Here's a little secret. The UCR and the CR are usually the same thing. Right? I mean, this is the response. This is also the response. When the dog smells food, which in Pavlov's thing, it was just meat powder, he drools. And then when the dog hears the bell, eventually, he drools. It's the same thing. It's an easy little thing to understand that the responses are going to be the same. So here's Pavlov's experiment in one place for you. Pretty simple if you're a visual learner. Facts that affect conditioning. So Pavlov discovered that the more frequently the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus were paired, the stronger was the association between the two. So the more he did it, the stronger the association was. The timing of the stimulus presentations affected the strength of the conditioned response. He found that conditioning was most effective when the conditioned stimulus was presented immediately before the unconditioned stimulus. A half a second was perfect. So he'd ring the bell and then present the food. That's how he'd do it. That's how conditioning actually became stronger. If the neutral stimulus, conditioned stimulus, was presented before the unconditioned stimulus. Stimulus generalization, we've actually already talked about this, the occurrence of a learned response not only to the original stimulus, but to other similar stimuli as well. So example, I was bit by a large dog, now I'm scared of all dogs. So this happened to little Albert during his experiment, where he eventually became scared of all furry, fuzzy white objects, not just the fuzzy white rat. And then stimulus discrimination is the exact opposite of that, so the occurrence of a learned response to a specific stimulus, but not to another similar stimuli. Example, I was bit by a spider, I am scared of spiders, not all bugs. Stimulus discrimination. Okay, so it's, you had this event, you learned something, you didn't generalize it, and you just stayed true to the thing that possibly hurt you, like a spider, and you just said, I'm scared of spiders, maybe even that type of particular spider, and then nothing else. For me, that's the black widow spider. I am scared of that spider. I am not scared of other spiders. I'm not scared of other bugs. But when I was in kindergarten, our school shut down for 2 days because of a black widow spider outbreak in my class. And that just stuck with me. I don't know why. I've seen 2 black widow spiders in the past year. Higher order conditioning. This is where we get these things that we have no idea that could possibly be controlling our behavior because we didn't try to learn it, it just happened. So, higher order conditioning, also called second order conditioning, a procedure in which a conditioned stimulus from one learning trial functions as the unconditioned stimulus in a new conditioning trial. This gets a little jumbled because all of the same words are here. But the same conditioned stimulus comes to elicit the conditioned response even though it has never been directly paired with the unconditioned stimulus. Don't worry about anything I just said. I'm going to explain it a little bit better here. So, here's our example. Higher order, second order conditioning. We have the electric can opener, right? It gets paired with the food. The cat is going to salivate at the sound of the electric can opener. It knows food is coming when that happens. But, let's take it a step farther. We've got a squeaky cabinet door where the can opener is actually located. So every time the cat hears a squeaky cabinet door, because that's where the electric can opener is, it starts salivating at the squeaky cabinet door. So the squeaky cabinet door equals the cat salivating. I can't tell you how many times this has happened in your life and you have no idea. I don't know what those things are. Okay? But I can give you a good example of a human right here. Here's the example. Like most children, Sandy and Don's daughter, Laura, received several rounds of immunizations when she was an infant. Each painful injection, the UCS, the unconditioned stimulus, elicited distress and made her cry, the UCR. After only the second vaccination, Laura developed a strong classically conditioned response. Just the sight of the nurse's white uniform, the conditioned stimulus, triggered an emotional outburst of fear and crying, the conditioned response. Interestingly, Laura's conditioned fear generalized to a wide range of white uniforms, including a pharmacist's white smock, veterinarian's white lab coat, and even the white jacket of a cosmetics saleswoman in a department store. To illustrate higher order conditioning, imagine a baby Laura reacted fearfully when she saw a white-jacketed cosmetic saleswoman in a department store. Imagine further that the saleswoman compounded Laura's reaction by spraying her mother, Sandy, with a new perfume fragrance and handing Sandy a free perfume sample to take home. If Laura responded with fear the next time she smelled that fragrance, higher order conditioning would have taken place. The perfume scent had never been paired with the original UCS, the painful injection. The scent became a new conditioned stimulus by virtue of being paired with the first conditioned stimulus, the white jacket. Seems like a stretch, right? For baby Laura. But it's not. Especially at a young age, right? How malleable you actually are, and these things are huge, huge moments. All right, extinction and spontaneous recovery. 3 words here. Acquisition, that really truly means acquiring knowledge, so refers to the first stages of learning when the response is established. In classical conditioning, it refers to the period of time when the stimulus comes to evoke the conditioned response. This is acquisition. This is where the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus are together. The food and the bell presented over and over and over and over again. And here we go, we're learning, we're acquiring this knowledge, and boom, guess what? The unconditioned stimulus is taken away. And then something else begins to happen, which is called extinction. The gradual weakening and apparent disappearance of conditioned behavior. In classical conditioning, Extinction occurs when the conditioned stimulus is repeatedly presented without the unconditioned stimulus. So we take away the food at this moment right here, and it's just the bell. And as you can see, okay, we still have that knowledge. We still have that knowledge. All right, yay, yay, yay. It's getting weaker and weaker, and then boom, it's gone. That is extinction. And then 2 weeks pass, and the dog's chilling, taking a little nap on the couch. All right, and then it hears a bell. And then again, out of nowhere, spontaneous recovery happens. The reappearance of a previously extinguished conditioned response after a period of time without exposure to the conditioned stimulus. So again, we have this break, and then all of a sudden, boom, spontaneous recovery. And then it happens again. Extinction has to happen again. All right, from Pavlov to Watson. So about the same time Pavlov was conducting his systematic studies of classical conditioning, a young psychologist named John B. Watson was attracting attention in the United States. But Watson was using infants instead of dogs. Cool guy. So Watson, like Pavlov, believed that psychology was following the wrong path, focusing on the study of subjective mental processes. Again, these people are behaviorists. They only care about overt behaviors, observable behaviors. So, in 1913, Watson directly challenged the early founders of psychology with his landmark article titled "Psychology as the Behaviorist Views It." It opens with this. Psychology as the behaviorist views it is a purely objective experimental branch of natural science. Its theoretical goal is the prediction and control of behavior. Introspection forms no essential part of its methods, nor is the scientific value of its data dependent upon the readiness with which they lend themselves to interpretation in terms of consciousness. Again, behaviorists don't care about what you feel about something. They only want to watch how you behave about something. So, what is behaviorism? Again, we've hit on this a couple times, but a school of psychology and theoretical viewpoint that emphasizes the scientific study of observable behaviors, especially as they pertain to the process of learning. I can't tell you this, but enough. I can't tell you this enough, but if you see behaviorism on an AP psychology question, and learning is an option for an answer, that's the answer. Okay? They go hand in hand, behaviorism and learning. That's where the study of learning is behaviorism. So, Watson believed that virtually all human behavior is a result of conditioning and learning. That is, due to past experience and environmental influences. In championing behaviorism, Watson took these views to an extreme, claiming that neither talent, personality, nor intelligence was inherited. Listen to this man speak right here. I should like to go one step further now and say, give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take any one at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select. Doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even beggarman and thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors. I am going beyond my facts, and I admit it. But so have the advocates of the contrary, and they have been doing it for many thousands of years. He says that if the environment is right, he can make anybody anything. Okay? So, in his studies, he finds that there are 3 emotions that represent inborn and natural unconditioned reflexes. He studied infants a lot. So fear, rage, and love. If you've been around an infant, you've probably understood this, that, okay, fear, that is, pretty, you can trigger that in a baby by a loud noise or a drop. Rage, because I don't have what I want. And then love, which probably comes from an abundance of skin-to-skin contact at a young age. they could be brought upon by specific stimuli, examples of fear, sudden drop in motion, loud noise. He conducted the little Albert experiment. It's considered unethical today, but we'll never know really what happened with little Albert because he died at a young age from an unrelated thing. But yeah, we'll never know the implications of the little Albert experiment. There's a little Albert experiment right there. This is your boy.
It's your boy!
All right? And John B. Watson was extremely focused during this experiment.
I'm focused, man.
Oh, all right. I love this little is it a tidbit? It is a tidbit. Okay, a little tidbit. So, shortly after little Albert, Watson's wife discovered that he was having an affair with his graduate student, Rosalie Rayner. Following a scandalous and highly publicized divorce, Watson was fired from his academic position. Despite his international fame as a scientist, no other university would hire him. Banned from academia, Watson married Rayner and joined the J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency. That wouldn't happen today, right? We'd be like, oh, cool, he got divorced, and he could get any job he wanted ever. But this is a different time, okay? He was an adulterer, and he couldn't get another job. One of the most famous scientists in the entire world at this point couldn't get another job because of that. So he went into advertising. And now everything that he came up with in advertising is thrown in your face every single second of every single day.
Young money, cash money!
So, a pioneer in the advertising business, his job was to make the consumer react with emotional responses like fear, rage, or love. He applied this to Johnson & Johnson baby powder and Pepco toothpaste in 1920. So, baby powder, what did he do? His advertisements, here, okay? Oh dear, I wish my baby wouldn't cry so much. He created doubts in the mother of caring for the baby. Are you a good mother? If you are, you use baby powder. You imagine that? I mean, to create that in somebody, just for them to buy your product, you can't imagine it, right? Because, hey, it happens every single second of every single day for you. Toothpaste targeted young women who smoked and could end up with smoke-stained teeth. Here we go. Who could love a girl with smoke-stained teeth? And you think to yourself, oh my gosh. And in this time, you know, marriage was a huge thing. Happened at a really young age.